Blood-soaked human bodies littered the battlefield as the Prilorian forces mercilessly cut them down by the thousands. The glorious alien conquest of Earth was supposed to take weeks, but thanks to Sullivan's mad plan to turn humans into killing machines, in mere hours the Prilorians were on the brink of total defeat. The Prilorians had expected a quick and easy victory as their massive invasion fleet descended on the primitive blue planet. They were the most technologically advanced and warlike race in the galaxy, having conquered and enslaved countless worlds for millennia. Their ruthless commander, Nox, was confident that Earth would be just another pushover planet to bring into their vast empire. But Nox and his Prilorians were in for a rude awakening. As their ships filled the skies and their ground troops and battle mechs began landing to occupy cities, Earth's leaders tried desperately to negotiate peace. But Nox dismissed their pleas with cruel laughter. He revealed that the Prilorians had been monitoring humans in secret for centuries. Nox sneered that humans were like a nest of ants, insignificant in the grand scheme but multiplying and advancing at an alarming rate. If humans kept progressing technologically at this pace while retaining their violent, warlike nature, they could threaten Prilorian dominance within a few generations. And so the Prilorians decided it was time to exterminate the human threat before it was too late. Earth's military forces mobilized in a futile last stand, but it was a hopeless fight. The alien warships, energy weapons, and armored warriors were light years beyond anything humans had. Projections showed the undersupplied and outgunned human defenses would be overrun in days. The extinction of the human race seemed all but inevitable. But deep underground in a secret research facility, humanity's brightest minds hatched an insane final plan. A Hail Mary pass to give humans a fighting chance. The risky and untested Prometheus project aimed to transform elite soldiers into supercharged cyborg warriors through extreme biological augmentations and neural implants. Most test subjects hadn't survived the agonizing procedures, and those that did found their minds fractured and their bodies freakishly changed. Lieutenant Scott Sullivan, a brilliant but haunted soldier, was the mastermind behind Prometheus. He had to practically beg shell-shocked world leaders to greenlight deploying his unstable cyborg troops as a last-ditch defense. Left with no other options, they reluctantly agreed. Sullivan himself volunteered to undergo the excruciating transformation alongside his men, not knowing if any of them would survive long enough to face the alien foe. Now, as swarms of Prilorian warships darken the skies and their troops rampage across continents, Sullivan prepares to unleash his Prometheus soldiers onto the unsuspecting alien invaders. Earth's survival hinges on this one desperate gambit, a few hundred augmented humans taking on the might of a galactic empire. The stage is set for the most pivotal battle in human history, one that will decide the fate of the planet and the future of the human race. Sullivan crouched behind a twisted slab of metal, his enhanced vision scanning the battlefield. The Prilorian command ship loomed above, its gleaming hull marred by the scars of battle. He glanced at his team, their faces etched with a mixture of perseverance and exhaustion. They had been fighting for hours, pushing their augmented bodies to the limit. With a silent signal, Sullivan led the charge. They moved like wraiths, their cybernetic limbs propelling them forward at inhuman speeds. The Prilorian defenses crumbled before their onslaught, alien soldiers falling in droves. Sullivan's reflexes were lightning quick, his enhanced strength allowing him to tear through the enemy lines with brutal efficiency. On the ground, the Prometheus soldiers wreaked havoc on the Prilorian forces. They dodged and weaved, their augmented senses allowing them to anticipate the enemy's every move. The alien troops, once confident in their superiority, now faltered in the face of the relentless human resistance. In the heart of the mothership, Nox pounded his fist against the control panel, rage boiling within him. The humans were proving to be far more formidable than he had anticipated. With a snarl, he barked orders to his troops. Unleash the devastators, raze their cities to the ground. The Prilorian weapons rained down upon Earth, searing beams of energy cutting through buildings and incinerating entire city blocks. The screams of the dying filled the air, but the Prometheus soldiers pressed on, undeterred by the carnage around them. Sullivan and his team launched a series of strategic strikes, targeting the Prilorian supply lines and communication hubs. They moved like ghosts, appearing from the shadows to sabotage critical infrastructure before vanishing into the chaos once more. The enhanced soldiers' tactical analysis capabilities allowed them to identify and exploit weaknesses in the enemy's defenses with ruthless precision. As the battle raged on, the toll on the Prometheus soldiers began to show. Their bodies, pushed beyond the limits of human endurance, started to falter. Some of the augmented warriors exhibited signs of mental instability, their enhanced aggression and heightened senses overwhelming their fragile grasp on humanity. Sullivan himself felt the weight of the enhancements bearing down upon him, his mind strained under the constant influx of data, his thoughts fractured and disjointed. He knew they were winning individual battles, but the Prilorians' sheer numbers and advanced technology threatened to turn the tide. In a moment of clarity, Sullivan devised a desperate plan. He gathered his most trusted compatriots and infiltrated the Prilorian mothership, fighting their way through the hordes of alien defenders. Their enhanced abilities were put to the ultimate test as they battled through the ship's labyrinthine corridors. Finally, Sullivan stood face-to-face with Nox, the Prilorian commander. The two warriors engaged in a brutal dance of death, their enhanced abilities matched in a furious display of combat prowess. Sullivan drew upon every ounce of his training and cybernetic enhancements, pushing himself beyond the brink of human limits. With a final devastating blow, Sullivan struck down Nox, sending the Prilorian commander crashing to the floor. The news of their leader's defeat spread like wildfire through the alien ranks, sowing chaos and disarray. As the Prilorians began to retreat, the true cost of the war became apparent. Earth lay in ruins, its cities reduced to smoldering rubble, and its population decimated. The Prometheus soldiers, their bodies and minds forever altered by the cybernetic enhancements, grappled with the consequences of their actions. Sullivan and his team emerged as both saviors and monsters, their incredible feats overshadowed by the horror of what they had become. The world looked upon them with a mixture of gratitude and revulsion, unsure of how to reconcile the heroes who had saved humanity with the unstable augmented warriors they now were. Sullivan stared out at the ruined cityscape, his cybernetic eyes scanning the destruction. Broken buildings and twisted metal stretched as far as he could see. The Prilorians were gone, but Earth lay in ruins. He flexed his augmented arm, the servos whirring softly. The enhancements that had saved humanity now felt like a curse. Nightmares of the brutal battle plagued him nightly. The screams of dying aliens and humans alike echoed in his mind. "Lieutenant Sullivan, sir." A voice broke through his brooding. Private Chen, one of his Prometheus soldiers, approached. "Command needs you. It's urgent." Sullivan nodded and followed Chen to the makeshift war room. Generals and politicians argued loudly around a holographic display of the globe. "Sullivan, thank God you're here," General Hammond said. "We've got a situation. Colonel Ivanov has gone rogue with a faction of Prometheus soldiers. He's seized control of Chicago and declared it an independent state." Sullivan's enhanced mind raced, processing the implications. Ivanov always was unstable. The enhancements must have pushed him over the edge. "He believes the Prometheus soldiers should rule Earth now," Hammond continued. "Says we're the only ones fit to lead humanity after saving it." "Madness," Sullivan muttered. "What are my orders?" "Assemble a team and put an end to this insurrection," Hammond said. "We can't afford another war so soon after the invasion." Sullivan gathered his most trusted Prometheus soldiers, Chen, Rodriguez, and Yamato. As they geared up, he briefed them on the mission. "Ivanov's gone off the deep end," he explained. "We need to shut this down fast before it spreads." They deployed to the outskirts of Chicago under cover of night. Sullivan's enhanced vision pierced the darkness as they approached Ivanov's compound. Suddenly, a hail of plasma bolts erupted from defensive positions. Sullivan and his team dove for cover. "Prilorian weapons!" Rodriguez shouted. "How the hell did they get those?" Sullivan's tactical computers analyzed the situation. Ivanov must have salvaged Prilorian tech. This just got a lot more complicated. They fought their way through the compound, enhanced reflexes and strength, allowing them to overcome Ivanov's forces. But Sullivan noticed something odd about the enemy soldiers. Their enhancements. They're different, he said as they paused to regroup. More advanced somehow. In the depths of the compound, they discovered the truth. Captured Prilorians huddled in cells, forced to work on enhancing Ivanov's soldiers further. Among them was a young alien named Zek. "Please," Zek pleaded. "You must stop Ivanov. He plans to merge our technology with yours, create unstoppable super soldiers to conquer Earth." Sullivan's team pressed on, battling waves of Ivanov's enhanced troops. They finally cornered the rogue colonel in his command center. Ivanov stood before them, more machine now than man. Prilorian tech fused with his Prometheus enhancements in a terrifying hybrid. "Can't you see, Sullivan?" Ivanov's voice boomed. "This is our destiny, to rule as gods over the primitive masses." "You've lost your humanity, Victor," Sullivan replied. "We saved Earth. We don't conquer it." The two enhanced soldiers clashed in a blur of superhuman speed and strength. Ivanov's alien upgrades gave him an edge, but Sullivan's unwavering will drove him on. In the end, Sullivan stood victorious over Ivanov's broken form. But the cost had been high. Chen and Yamato lay dead, victims of Ivanov's monstrous creations. As the dust settled, Sullivan surveyed the carnage around him. They had saved Earth once again, but at what cost? The Prometheus soldiers were heroes, but also harbingers of a terrifying new world. What place was there for them in the peace they had fought so hard to win? Sullivan stood amid the wreckage of Ivanov's compound, his enhanced senses still on high alert. The stench of ozone and charred flesh hung in the air. As he surveyed the destruction, Zek approached, his alien features contorted with urgency. "Sullivan, there's something you need to know," Zek said, his voice trembling. "The Prilorians, they didn't retreat. They're coming back. In force." Sullivan's cybernetic eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Zek explained rapidly, his words tumbling out. "Nox survived. He's gathered an armada from across the galaxy. They're coming to wipe out humanity completely." Sullivan's mind raced, processing the implications. He turned to Rodriguez, the only other survivor of his team. "We need to mobilize, now." In the days that followed, Sullivan and his dwindling team forged an uneasy alliance with Zek and the remaining Prilorian prisoners. They worked tirelessly, combining human ingenuity with alien knowledge to retrofit Earth's weapons. Sullivan stood in the lab examining a prototype rifle. Its sleek design incorporated Prilorian energy cells and human ballistics. "This is our edge," he said, hefting the weapon. "We hit them with something they won't expect." As they prepared, the first wave of Nox's armada entered Earth's atmosphere. The sky lit up with the fiery trails of orbital strikes. Cities crumbled under the onslaught. Sullivan led his team into battle, a motley crew of enhanced humans and Prilorian defectors. They struck from the shadows, their hybrid weapons tearing through alien defenses. In New York, Sullivan's team ambushed a Prilorian landing party. Their enhanced reflexes allowed them to dodge energy blasts while returning fire with deadly accuracy. The hybrid weapons punched through Prilorian shields, downing ship after ship. But the aliens kept coming. For every ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. Sullivan realized they needed to cut off the head of the snake. "Zek!" he shouted over the din of battle. "How do we get to Nox?" The Prilorian's eyes widened. "The dreadnought? But it's suicide." Sullivan grinned, the expression feral on his scarred face. "That's our specialty." They formulated a plan, using Zek's knowledge to identify a weak point in the dreadnought's defenses. Sullivan assembled a strike team, the best of the remaining Prometheus soldiers and their Prilorian allies. They infiltrated the massive ship, fighting through corridors swarming with alien troops. Sullivan's enhanced strength allowed him to rip through bulkheads, while Rodriguez provided covering fire with their hybrid weapons. Finally, they reached the bridge. Nox stood there, his alien features twisted with rage. "Sullivan," he snarled, "I'll enjoy killing you again." The two titans clashed, their augmented bodies pushing the limits of physics. Sullivan's fist connected with Nox's jaw, the impact shattering nearby consoles. Nox retaliated with a flurry of blows that would have pulverized a normal human. They grappled, evenly matched, as the battle for Earth raged outside the viewports. Sullivan felt his enhancements straining, artificial muscles tearing under the stress. But he pushed on, drawing on reserves of strength and willpower he didn't know he possessed. Nox's claws raked across Sullivan's face, tearing through flesh and circuitry alike. Sullivan responded by driving his knee into the alien's midsection, feeling ribs crack under the impact. As they fought, the fate of two species hung in the balance. The outcome of their personal vendetta would determine the future of Earth, and Sullivan's enhanced fist connected with Nox's jaw, the impact reverberating through the command chamber. Sparks flew as cybernetic components clashed. Nox stumbled back, his alien features contorted in rage. "You can't win, human," Nox snarled, his voice a guttural growl. Sullivan wiped blood from his lip, his cybernetic eye scanning for weaknesses. "Watch me!" He unleashed a barrage from his hybrid weapon, the energy bolt slamming into Nox's personal shields. The alien technology, fused with human ingenuity, overloaded Nox's defenses. The shields flickered and died. Nox roared in fury, retaliating with a blazing energy blast from his palm. The force hit Sullivan square in the chest, hurling him through reinforced bulkheads. Metal screeched and tore as Sullivan's augmented body smashed through layer after layer of alien alloy. Sullivan crashed to a stop, his systems blaring warnings of damage. He pushed himself up, servos whining in protest. "Rodriguez, status," he barked into his comm. "We're pinned down outside the command center," Rodriguez's voice crackled back. "These Prylorian bastards just keep coming." Sullivan's tactical computer analyzed the situation, integrating the knowledge Zek had shared. He switched tactics, activating his cloaking field and moving with inhuman speed. Nox's eyes darted around the chamber, searching for his opponent. Sullivan struck from behind, his cybernetic arm locking around the alien's throat. Nox thrashed, his claws raking Sullivan's face. Alarms blared throughout the dreadnought. Sullivan's enhanced hearing picked up Prylorian chatter about a singularity protocol. "Zek, what are they doing?" Sullivan grunted as he grappled with Nox. Zek's voice was filled with terror. "He's activating the dreadnought's core. It will create a black hole, destroy your entire planet." Sullivan felt the ship shudder as reality itself began to warp. Gravity fluctuated wildly, debris floating one moment and crashing down the next. "We need to end this now," Sullivan shouted to his team. "Push to the command center." They fought through waves of Prylorian soldiers, their hybrid weapons cutting swaths through alien armor. Sullivan saw Rodriguez go down under a pile of enemies, only to surge back up with a primal roar, his cybernetic limbs tearing through alien flesh. They burst into the command center as the singularity grew, its gravitational pull threatening to tear the ship apart. Sullivan saw his chance. The fluctuating gravity disrupted Nox's movements, throwing off his enhanced reflexes. Zek's eyes met Sullivan's. Understanding passed between them. "It's been an honor, human," Zek said. Before Sullivan could respond, Zek overloaded his cybernetic implants. The electromagnetic pulse washed over them, temporarily disabling Nox's remaining defenses. Sullivan channeled every ounce of power into his cybernetic systems. With a yell of defiance, he charged Nox. His fist shattered the alien's armor, plunging deep into Nox's chest. With a savage pull, Sullivan ripped out the pulsing cybernetic heart. Nox's eyes widened in shock, then dimmed. The alien commander crumpled to the floor, dead. Alarm screamed as the singularity reached critical mass. Sullivan turned to his team. "We need to move, now!" They raced through the disintegrating dreadnought, fighting off panicked Prylorian soldiers. Sullivan's enhanced legs propelled him forward, carrying wounded comrades. They reached the hangar bay, piling into a Prylorian shuttle. Rodriguez's cybernetic arms interfaced with the alien controls, forcing the ship to launch. They burst free of the dreadnought just as the singularity collapsed in on itself. The resulting explosion consumed the massive ship, the shockwave buffeting their tiny craft. As the blinding light faded, Sullivan saw the Prilorian armada in disarray. Without their leader and flagship, the alien ships began to retreat. Sullivan slumped against the shuttle's wall, his systems finally giving out. He looked at the battered, bloody faces of his surviving team. They had won, but the cost had been unimaginable. Through the viewport, Earth came into view. The planet bore the scars of war, entire continents reshaped by the conflict. Sullivan knew the real work was just beginning. They had saved humanity, but at what cost? The line between human and machine, friend and foe, had never been so blurred. Sullivan's cybernetic eye flickered, struggling to recalibrate after the intense battle. He stood amidst the rubble of what was once New York, his enhanced senses picking up the acrid smell of burnt metal and the distant rumble of collapsing structures. "Rodriguez status report," he barked into his comm, wincing as his damaged systems sent a jolt of pain through his neural interface. "We're alive, but barely," Rodriguez's voice crackled back. "Half the team's down with critical injuries. We need evac, ASAP." Sullivan's tactical computer flashed a warning. An incoming transmission cut through the static. The message was garbled, but clear enough. A distress call from Antarctica. "Listen up," Sullivan addressed his battered team. "We've got a situation. A research facility in the Antarctic has gone dark. They're under attack." Kral, a young Prilorian who had joined their ranks after Zek's sacrifice, stepped forward. His alien features were etched with concern. "That facility, it houses some of the most advanced Prilorian tech we've recovered. If it falls into the wrong hands..." Sullivan cut him off with a nod. "I know. We can't let that happen." They commandeered a Prilorian shuttle, its sleek design a stark contrast to the devastation around them. As they soared over the war-torn landscape, Sullivan briefed his team. The facility had been studying Prilorian technology, seeking ways to merge it with human physiology. Now it was under siege by a rogue Prilorian force. The journey was treacherous. Pockets of resistance ambushed them at every turn. Near the ruins of Chicago, a Prilorian warship emerged from the clouds. Sullivan's enhanced reflexes kicked in. He barrel-rolled the shuttle, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts. "Rodriguez on the guns!" Sullivan shouted. Rodriguez's cybernetic arms interfaced with the weapon systems. He returned fire, his enhanced targeting systems finding gaps in the warship's shields. The enemy vessel erupted in flames, plummeting to the earth below. As they approached Antarctica, the true horror of the situation became clear. The research facility, once a bastion of scientific progress, now resembled a war zone. Smoke billowed from multiple breaches in its reinforced walls. Prilorian dropships swarmed the perimeter. Sullivan set the shuttle down behind an ice formation, using it as cover. "Kral, what can you tell us about the facility's defenses?" Kral's eyes glowed as he accessed the data. 3 primary entry points, but the Prilorians have already breached 2 of them. "Then we hit them where they least expect it," Sullivan said, his cybernetic eye scanning the battlefield. "We go in through the 3rd point." They moved swiftly across the icy terrain, their enhanced bodies allowing them to navigate the treacherous landscape with ease. As they approached the facility, the sounds of battle grew louder. Inside, chaos reigned. Human scientists and security personnel lay dead or dying. Prilorian soldiers stalked the corridors, their alien weaponry leaving scorch marks on the walls. Sullivan's team engaged the enemy, their hybrid weapons tearing through Prilorian armor. In the tight confines of the facility, their enhanced strength and speed gave them a crucial advantage. They fought their way to the central lab, where they found the source of the attack. A Prilorian commander, more machine than alien, stood amidst a group of terrified human hostages. "Zirian," Kral whispered, his voice filled with dread. Zirian turned, his cybernetic eyes focusing on Sullivan. Ah, the human who killed Knox. I've been waiting for you. Sullivan raised his weapon, but Zirian was faster. With inhuman speed, he grabbed a hostage, using her as a shield. One move, and I'll tear her apart, he snarled. Sullivan's mind raced, calculating odds and outcomes. He needed a distraction. Kral, now, he shouted. Kral activated a device on his wrist. A pulse of energy washed over the room, temporarily disrupting Zirian's augmentations. In that split second, Sullivan acted. He charged forward, his cybernetic fist connecting with Zirian's jaw. The impact sent the Prylorian commander flying across the room, but Zirian recovered quickly, his own enhancements kicking in. The two enhanced warriors clashed in a blur of motion, fists connected with the force of jackhammers, cybernetic limbs strained against each other, servos whining in protest. Zirian's claws raked across Sullivan's chest, tearing through synthetic muscle and circuitry. Sullivan retaliated with a devastating uppercut that shattered part of Zirian's facial plating. As they fought, Kral worked furiously at a nearby console, his fingers flying over the alien interface. Sullivan, I can disrupt his systems, but I need time. Sullivan nodded, redoubling his efforts. He pushed his enhancements to their limits, ignoring the warnings flashing across his HUD. His fist connected with Zirian's midsection, driving the air from the alien's lungs. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Zirian's mouth twisted into a cruel smile. Too late, human. This place is set to explode. You've lost. Sullivan's blood ran cold. He had to make a choice. Pursue Zirian and potentially stop future threats, or save the hostages and his team. In the end, it wasn't a choice at all. Everyone out now! Sullivan roared, turning to help the nearest hostage to their feet. As his team rushed to evacuate, Sullivan faced Zirian one last time. The Prylorian commander sneered, thinking he had won, but Sullivan had one last trick up his sleeve. With lightning speed, he closed the distance between them. His cybernetic arm, pushed beyond its limits, crackled with energy. He drove his fist into Zirian's chest, the impact sending shockwaves through the room. Zirian's eyes widened in shock as his systems failed. He crumpled to the ground, defeated. Sullivan staggered, his own systems on the brink of failure. The facility shook around him, the self-destruct sequence in its final stages. He stumbled toward the exit, each step an agony of failing servos and torn synthetic muscle. The world blurred around him as his systems began to shut down. Just as he thought it was over, he felt strong arms grab him. Kral and a group of Prometheus soldiers had come back for him. "Well, we don't leave our own behind," Kral said, hauling Sullivan to safety. They escaped just as the facility exploded, the shockwave nearly overtaking their retreating shuttle. As they soared away from the destruction, Sullivan looked at his battered team. They had won, but the cost had been high. Earth was safe, for now, but the scars of this war would take a long time to heal. Sullivan's cybernetic eye whirred as it recalibrated, scanning the war-torn landscape of Earth. The scars of battle stretched across continents, a stark reminder of the price of victory. He stood amidst the rubble, his team gathering around him. Kral approached, his alien features set in a grim expression. "Sullivan, we've received new intel. There's a Prylorian research facility hidden in the asteroid belt. It could hold the key to preventing future attacks." Sullivan nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. "Assemble a team, we're going in." Days later, their ship cut through the void of space, dodging debris as they navigated the treacherous asteroid field. Sullivan gripped the controls, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to weave through gaps barely wider than their vessel. "Proximity alert," Sergeant Ramirez called out. "Prylorian patrol, 3 o'clock." Sullivan banked hard, tucking the ship behind a massive asteroid. They held their breath as the patrol passed by, engines thrumming ominously close. As they approached their target, a sprawling asteroid loomed before them. Sullivan's cybernetic eye picked out subtle irregularities in its surface. "There," he pointed, "hidden entrance. Prepare for insertion." They breached the facility's outer defenses, alarms blaring as they fought their way inside. Sullivan's hybrid weapon spat coherent light, cutting down Prylorian guards with surgical precision. Private Hansen took point, his cybernetic legs propelling him forward at inhuman speeds. He cleared a path through the alien defenders, leaving a trail of broken bodies in his wake. As they pushed deeper into the complex, the true horror of the facility revealed itself. Sullivan's team came upon a chamber filled with mutilated human bodies, the results of failed experiments. "Jesus Christ," Ramirez whispered, his face pale beneath his helmet. Sullivan hardened his face, rage building inside him. "We end this, now!" They found the survivors huddled in cells, their bodies bearing the scars of Prylorian experimentation. Among them was Dr. Emily Williams, her once brilliant mind clouded by trauma. "Sullivan?" she croaked as he helped her to her feet. "You came—" "We're getting you out of here," Sullivan assured her, supporting her weight as they moved towards the exit. As they secured the prisoners and downloaded crucial data from the facility's computers, a voice called out from the shadows. "Wait, don't shoot!" Sullivan whirled, weapon raised, to find a Prylorian scientist with his hands up in surrender. "I am Varkan," the alien said. "I've been working against this atrocity from within. Please let me help you." Sullivan's tactical computer ran through scenarios, weighing the risks and potential benefits of trusting this Prylorian. Before he could decide, alarms blared throughout the facility. "Incoming reinforcements," Hansen shouted. "We're out of time." Sullivan made his choice. "Varkan, with us! Move!" They fought their way back through the facility, Prylorian forces hot on their heels. As they neared their extraction point, Sullivan's enhanced hearing picked up a conversation between two Prylorian soldiers. "Protect the bioweapon at all costs," one shouted. "It's our only chance against the human enhancements." Sullivan's blood ran cold. He turned to Varkan, suspicion growing. "What bioweapon?" Varkan's eyes widened, fear evident in his alien features. I can explain." But there was no time. Prylorian reinforcements had arrived in force, cutting off their escape route. Sullivan and his team took cover, preparing for the fight of their lives. As energy blasts rained down around them, Sullivan knew the stakes had never been higher. They had to secure whatever bioweapon the Prylorians had developed and get it off this rock. The fate of the Prometheus program, and perhaps all of humanity, hung in the balance. Sullivan checked his weapon's charge and nodded to his team. "Let's finish this." They surged forward, enhanced bodies and hybrid weapons clashing with Prylorian technology in a desperate battle for survival. Sullivan's cybernetic eye scanned the facility's layout, processing the data at lightning speed. The truth hit him like a punch to the gut. Varkan stood before them, a sinister smile playing across his alien features. "You bastard," Sullivan growled, his enhanced muscles tensing. "You've been developing a bioweapon against us this whole time." Varkan's smile widened. "Did you really think I'd help the very species we're trying to eradicate?" He pressed a button on his wrist, and alarms blared throughout the facility. "My brethren are coming. You're finished, Sullivan." Sullivan's mind raced, calculating odds and formulating plans. He turned to his team. "Ramirez, take your squad and secure that bioweapon. We can't let it fall into Prylorian hands. Hansen, Dr. Williams, you're with me. We're going after Varkan." Ramirez nodded, his cybernetic arm reconfiguring into a high-powered assault weapon. "Consider it done, sir." He motioned to his team, and they moved out, their enhanced bodies allowing them to sprint at inhuman speeds. Sullivan, Hansen, and Dr. Williams advanced on Varkan. The alien scientist's body suddenly shimmered, revealing a suite of experimental augmentations. He moved with blinding speed, closing the distance in an instant. Sullivan barely had time to raise his arm to block Varkan's first strike. The impact sent shockwaves through his cybernetic limb. Hansen opened fire, but Varkan dodged the energy bolts with impossible agility. "You're not the only ones with tricks," Varkan sneered, his voice distorted by the augmentations. The fight escalated quickly. Sullivan and Hansen tag-teamed Varkan, their enhanced reflexes and strength allowing them to keep pace with the augmented alien. Dr. Williams provided support, using her knowledge of Prylorian tech to try and disrupt Varkan's systems. Meanwhile, Ramirez and his team fought their way through waves of Prylorian guards. They burst into a lab and froze. Human bodies, grotesquely mutated, floated in stasis tanks. Ramirez's cybernetic eye recorded the horrific scene. "We'll make them pay for this," he promised, his voice tight with rage. They pushed on, determined to reach the bioweapon. Back in the main chamber, Sullivan landed a solid hit on Varkan, sending the alien scientist stumbling back. But Varkan wasn't finished. He slammed his hand onto a nearby console. Alarms blared and a computerized voice announced, "Atmospheric venting initiated." Sullivan felt the air being sucked out of the room. "Seal the sections," he shouted. Hansen and Dr. Williams raced to close off parts of the facility, trapping what little breathable air remained. With time running out and Prylorian reinforcements approaching, Sullivan knew they needed a game changer. He contacted Kral. "We need to overload the power core. Can you do it?" Kral's voice crackled over the comm. "Affirmative. Initiating overload sequence now." A massive surge of energy pulsed through the facility. Varkan stumbled, his augmentations flickering. Sullivan seized the opportunity, launching himself at the alien. They crashed together, enhanced human and augmented Prylorian locked in a brutal struggle. Sullivan's fist connected with Varkan's jaw, the impact cracking the alien's exoskeleton. Varkan retaliated, his claws raking across Sullivan's chest, tearing through synthetic muscle. Just as Sullivan gained the upper hand, Varkan's eyes flashed with desperate fury. He reached for a hidden panel on the wall. "If I can't have victory, neither can you." The facility rumbled ominously as Varkan triggered the self-destruct sequence. Sullivan's blood ran cold as he realized the implications. He turned to his team. "Ramirez, get that bioweapon and get out of here now!" Sullivan refocused on Varkan, channeling every ounce of power his Prometheus enhancements could muster. His vision tunneled, focusing solely on his target. With a roar of defiance, Sullivan unleashed a barrage of strikes, each one pushing Varkan's augmentations beyond their limits. The alien scientist's systems began to overload, sparks flying from his exoskeleton. With one final devastating blow, Sullivan sent Varkan crashing to the ground, his augmentations sputtering and failing. The facility shook violently, chunks of the ceiling beginning to fall. Sullivan stumbled, his own systems pushed to the brink. Through the haze of pain and exhaustion, he felt strong arms grabbing him. Hansen and Dr. Williams were there, dragging him towards the exit. They raced through collapsing corridors, the heat of the impending explosion licking at their heels. They reached their ship just as the facility erupted in a massive fireball, the shockwave nearly knocking them off their feet as they stumbled up the ramp. As they lifted off, leaving the destroyed asteroid behind, a transmission came through. Sullivan's heart sank as he listened to the news of Ramirez and his squad's sacrifice. They had secured the bioweapon, ensuring its destruction, but at the cost of their lives. Silence fell over the ship's bridge as the full weight of their victory and its cost settled upon them. Sullivan looked at his battered team, their faces a mix of grief and exhaustion. They had won this battle, but the war was just getting started. As Earth grew larger in their view screen, Sullivan knew that the fight against the Prylorians had only just begun. The ship touched down on Earth, its hull scarred from battle. Sullivan stepped onto the tarmac, his cybernetic eye scanning the crowd that had gathered. Cheers erupted as he and his team emerged, battered but alive. General Hayes approached, his face a mix of relief and sorrow. "Sullivan, we've lost good people, but you've saved us all." Sullivan nodded, his throat tight. "Ramirez and his squad, they're the real heroes." As the debriefing began, an aide burst into the room, face pale. "Sir, we've got a situation." Satellite imagery flashed across the screen, showing devastation in major cities. New York, London, Tokyo, all under attack. "What the hell?" Sullivan leaned in, his enhanced vision picking out details. Alien weaponry, unlike anything they'd faced before. General Hayes's voice was grim. While you were gone, a Prylorian splinter group infiltrated Earth. They're led by a commander named Xyloth. He's gotten his hands on experimental tech, plasma cannons, cloaking devices. We're outgunned. Sullivan's fists clenched. Not for long, I need a team. Hansen, Yang, you're with me. Dr. Williams, we'll need your expertise. Krall stepped forward. I can help. My people who defected, we know their tactics. Hours later, they were in the air again. Sullivan studied the intel on Xyloth's base, an old military complex in the southwest. The desert stretched below them, a wasteland scarred by war. Coming in hot, Hansen called from the cockpit. Anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky. Sullivan grabbed his weapon. On my mark! They hit the ground running, Prylorian energy bolts sizzling past. Hansen's cybernetic legs propelled him forward at inhuman speed, drawing fire. Yang flanked left, his hybrid rifle spitting death. Sullivan pushed forward, Dr. Williams at his side. They fought their way into the complex, corridors echoing with gunfire and alien screams. A door hissed open. Sullivan's blood ran cold. Human bodies, mutilated and discarded, filled the room. Dr. Williams gasped. They're experimenting, trying to replicate our enhancements. A scream echoed from deeper in the facility. They pressed on, fury driving them forward. Suddenly the air crackled with energy. A beam of pure destruction cut through the corridor, vaporizing everything in its path. Cover! Sullivan shouted, dragging Dr. Williams behind a blast door. Yang's voice crackled over the comm. Sullivan, we can't hold out against that thing. Sullivan's mind raced. He turned to Krall. The power grid, can we overload it? Krall nodded. Yes, but we'd need to reach the main control room. Do it, Sullivan ordered. We'll draw their fire. They split up, Sullivan leading the charge. His enhanced muscles pushed to the limit as he dodged energy blasts and tore through Prylorian soldiers. The control room loomed ahead. Sullivan burst through the door, coming face to face with Xyloth himself. The Prylorian commander was a grotesque fusion of alien and machine, experimental enhancements gleaming. Sullivan, Xyloth hissed. I've been waiting for this. They clashed, enhanced human versus augmented alien. Fists flew with bone-crushing force. Sullivan's cybernetic eye analyzed Xyloth's movements, searching for weaknesses. Hansen and Yang fought off Xyloth's guards, buying time. The facility shook as Krall worked to overload the grid. Sullivan saw his opening. A flaw in Xyloth's armor, where alien tech met flesh. He struck, his enhanced strength shattering the connection. Xyloth howled in pain and rage. With his free hand, he slammed a button on the console. Alarms blared. Self-destruct sequence initiated, an emotionless voice announced. Sullivan's team regrouped, racing for the exit. Explosions rocked the complex as they ran, heat searing their backs. They burst into the open air just as the facility erupted in a massive fireball. The shockwave knocked them off their feet, sand and debris raining down. As the dust settled, Sullivan stood, surveying the destruction. His team gathered around him, battered and exhausted. It's over, Dr. Williams said softly. Sullivan nodded, but his eyes scanned the horizon. For now, but we need to stay ready. The fight's not over yet. They trudged back to their transport, the weight of their victory heavy on their shoulders. Earth was safe, but the cost had been high. As they lifted off, leaving the destroyed base behind, Sullivan knew that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. Sullivan's transport touched down on the tarmac, its engines whining as they powered down. He stepped out, legs unsteady after weeks of grueling combat. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of their victory and its cost. Cheers erupted from the gathered crowd. Faces beamed with pride and relief, but Sullivan couldn't shake the hollow feeling in his gut. He scanned the sea of people, his enhanced vision picking out familiar faces among the throng. General Hayes approached, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. Welcome home, Sullivan. You and your team have done the impossible. Sullivan nodded, his throat tight. Thank you, sir, but we lost good people out there. Hayes clasped Sullivan's shoulder. I know. Their sacrifice won't be forgotten. As the team made their way through the crowd, Sullivan noticed Dr. Williams lagging behind. Her face was drawn, eyes darting nervously. He fell back to walk beside her. You okay, Doc? He asked quietly. Williams flinched at his voice. I need to speak with you. Privately. Sullivan's enhanced senses picked up her elevated heart rate, the slight tremor in her hands. Of course. Let's find somewhere quiet. They slipped away from the main group, finding an empty conference room in the nearby facility. As soon as the door closed, Williams slumped against the wall, her composure crumbling. Emily, what's wrong? Sullivan asked, concern etching his features. Williams took a shuddering breath. When Xylath had me, he didn't just interrogate me. He experimented on me. Sullivan's blood ran cold. What do you mean? He was trying to reverse engineer the Prometheus enhancements, Williams said, her voice barely above a whisper. I managed to hide the data, but Scott, he succeeded. On me. She held out her hand, and Sullivan watched in shock as her fingers elongated, bones shifting beneath the skin. Williams' eyes flashed with an unnatural light. I can feel it, Scott, she said, her voice cracking. The power, but also the rage. It's consuming me. Sullivan stepped forward, reaching out to comfort her, but Williams jerked away. Don't, she cried. I'm not safe. I can feel myself slipping away. Before Sullivan could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. The intercom crackled to life. Security breach in Section C. All personnel evacuate immediately. Sullivan's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of shattering glass and screams in the distance. He looked at Williams, saw the horror in her eyes. It started, she whispered. They raced out of the room, Sullivan's mind working overtime to process the situation. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with the carnage. Bodies lay strewn across the hallway, walls buckled, and equipment destroyed. In the center of it, all stood Williams, but not the Williams he knew. Her body had contorted, muscles bulging unnaturally. Her eyes blazed with an inhuman fury. Emily, Sullivan called out, hoping to reach her. The thing that was once Emily Williams turned, snarling. With lightning speed, she charged at Sullivan. He barely had time to brace himself before she slammed into him, sending them both crashing through a wall. Sullivan's enhanced strength allowed him to push her off, but she was relentless. She lashed out with superhuman speed and power, her blows denting the metal walls. Emily, please! Sullivan pleaded as he dodged her attacks. You have to fight this! For a moment, he saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, but it was quickly consumed by rage. She lunged again, her hand wrapping around Sullivan's throat. As spots danced in his vision, Sullivan made a decision. With a silent apology, he struck out, his enhanced fist connecting with Williams' jaw. The force of the blow sent her flying back, crashing through equipment. Sullivan stood, gasping for air, as Hansen and the rest of the team burst into the room, weapons raised. What the hell happened? Hansen demanded, eyes wide as he took in the destruction. Sullivan looked at Williams's unconscious form, his heart heavy. We won the war, he said softly. But I think we've lost something far more important. As medics rushed in to secure Williams, Sullivan knew that the true cost of their victory was only beginning to reveal itself. The Prometheus legacy, it seemed, would haunt them long after the Prilorians were gone.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.